Double teams are an extremely frustrating concept for many of the league's top scorers. They also represent the greatest sign of respect. Think about it. The defense is saying, we care so much about getting the ball out of your hands, we'll completely abandon another player to accomplish that. For this reason, it's not an unbeatable coverage. The quickest decision makers will find the open man and trust their teammates to convert with the advantage created. However, not every team is equipped with the creation and shot-making ability to capitalize on that. The Celtics have experienced this firsthand, with teams loading up on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and living with whatever their teammates could provide. With the recent influx of talent on the roster, this is a tougher gamble to make. Occasionally, teams will still find success with it. This seems to have clicked for Boston recently, because in search of their own defensive identity, they've leaned on double teams and help defense more than ever. As a result, they've re-established themselves as a top 10 defense. This adjustment popped up on the radar against the Minnesota Timberwolves. In the midst of a 3-game losing streak, dropping another was not an option. There was a level of intensity and communication that was reminiscent of last season, along with a clear emphasis on double teams. Now, Boston may send a trap from time to time, but hitting the Wolves with several is noteworthy and exciting, especially when it's the team's offensive engine that's forced to give it up. The doubles took Anthony Edwards out of his rhythm and put an end to his big night. The added benefit of this scheme adjustment is that it's encouraging better help defense habits. While the Celtics have a number of capable isolation defenders, the belief that there's help behind them makes it easier to guard on ball. Take this play for example, where Al Horford can recover for the block thanks to 3 Celtics in position to help. Combine an extremely switchable defense with precise help, that's a frustrating blend to face. The Bucks got a taste of this on Christmas Day. Doubles were sent, but the swarming help defense and rotation led the Celtics to a 20-point victory. The driving lanes were closed off. Even when the Bucks made it past one defender, there was another ready to accept him with open arms. If there's a non-shooter in the lineup, the help is even more noticeable. Al Horford completely leaves Giannis wide open to help on the drive, while Tatum angles Jrue Holiday directly into that help. Giannis Antetokounmpo has steadily improved in each area of the game since entering the league. This includes his ability to handle doubles. He's faced the second most doubles per game this season, and his team scores an impressive 1.26 points per possession on these looks. The Celtics are certainly familiar with those numbers, but still felt comfortable testing him with a few timely doubles. They're now the ones telling teams, "We don't trust you, prove us wrong." The Houston Rockets had a chance to test this theory next. Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green had their moments, but they too couldn't find help elsewhere. Their story at this point in their careers is similar to the Jays' early years, where a lack of surrounding talent shrinks the floor. On each Sengun post-up, 4 different Celtics had a foot in the paint. They're sagging off players completely and daring them to make a shot with the closeout flying toward them. All it takes is 1 to 2 misses to zap a role player's confidence and make them hesitate or pass up the next shot. Robert Williams' presence was really felt in this game too. Remember the idea of players defending better with strong help defense behind them? That works both ways. As much as the Celtics defenders appreciate Rob on the back line, ball handlers are equally scared of taking it to him. If they find the courage to test the Time Lord, the shot is getting altered. It might still go in, but it'll need a healthy amount of arc on it. Either way, a contested floater is a shot the Celtics will live with every time. With the Clippers in town for a rematch, Boston clawed their way to victory. Perhaps the most impressive defensive performance from this recent stretch of games coincided with their largest double-team frequency. Kawhi and Paul George were eager to get to their spots. Boston simply would not allow that. The Celtics mixed in double teams on clean post-ups, isolation, and pick-and-roll opportunities to go along with their base coverage. This combination, paired with shuffling the timing of the doubles, created a sense of unpredictability, a central component to an effective defense. Game on the line, defense answered the call again. The Clippers' final 2 possessions, Derek White and Al Horford took turns pinning layups off the backboard. In a league where shot creation can beat out great defense, the Celtics want to show the world they have both. Even in defeat, Boston put together moments of brilliance against the Denver Nuggets. Actions were shut down, lanes were blocked off, and Denver had to settle for tough shots late in the shot clock. The switching was precise in both of these clips here, but do you know what the biggest factor was? Denver missed shots. They weren't doing much of that, and it made the defense look worse than it was. Here's an example. A gifted shot maker like Bones Highland can create against the tightest coverages. It doesn't make it bad defense or an indictment on the system, just a hat tip moment. Here's nearly an identical look to Highland's previous two makes, but a good contest from Williams forces him to throw it away. The point here is that we can't be selective about what constitutes a good defensive possession solely based on makes and misses. New additions to the system require patience to see results, but consistent effort and commitment have to be there as well. When the Celtics bring the right mindset and approach, they've been very successful. When they come out flat and abandon their principles, things look rough. The next two games were perfect examples of that. Boston got its teeth kicked in by the Thunder. As much as I'd like to for the sake of this video, you can't avoid this game. The help defense was bad, whether it was over-helping when it wasn't necessary or not helping at all. This looked like an entirely different team from the few games prior. Of course, there were moments of tough shot making from OKC, but overall they looked one step ahead of the Celtics at all times, and operating with a ton of confidence. This shouldn't be the case, especially not against a young team without their best player. I'll touch on this a bit more later. For now, let's accept that the game was terrible. I'm sure you don't need any convincing of that fact, and I won't talk you out of it either. More importantly is how the Celtics would respond to it. What a response it was. They strolled into Dallas and walked out with a 29-point victory, holding the Mavs to 95 points, the Celtics' third best mark of the season. The defense bounced back in a big way, shutting down each member of the team supporting Cass, turning the water off in 1v1 matchups, and showing help whenever necessary. Most importantly, they kept Luka in check, putting up one of his worst performances of the season. From a numbers perspective, Doncic shot 7 for 23 from the field, 30.4%, and was a minus 20 on the game, each of which are his third worst figures of the season. On top of that, he only managed 3 assists to go along with 4 turnovers, his lowest assist total of the year, and the first game with fewer assists than turnovers this season. His teammates played a part in that, missing some shots, but there were moments where Luka looked genuinely uncomfortable. That's rare. Earlier, I said the Clippers game was the most complete defensive performance they put together recently. That title was quickly stolen against the Mavericks. It's one thing to take away the role players and try to slow down the main weapons. They took everything off the table for Luka and didn't fear his help to get the job done. I said I'd get back to the topic of struggling against young teams, especially those missing their best players. The game against the Spurs was an example of this trend. Without Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and Jakob Poeltl, 3 of the Spurs' top 4 scorers, there was no reason for this to be just a 5-point victory. This game, and the loss to OKC, there's 2 main causes. Players have trouble putting in full effort against weaker opponents, which can be frustrating, but understandable during such a long season. The other factor is the retooling of your game plan that happens when the main scoring options are out. If there's no Shai Alexander or Keldon Johnson, the team doesn't fear anyone else enough to trap them, and as a result, they'll sit back and drop coverage and believe they can win on talent alone. That's not going to be the case every night. The effort needs to be there, or at the very least they shouldn't deviate from the scheme. When it mattered most, they beat out the Spurs with effort and execution. The effort came and went throughout the game like a candle at the end of its wick, but it found enough juice to get the job done. With a 2-point lead and 25 seconds on the game clock, Boston switched everything and locked down with their double big lineup. Finding comfort again with this unit is another key to unlocking last year's tenacious defense. With Marcus Smart out, the Celtics took the opportunity to do just that, giving Rob his first start of the season alongside Al Horford. The results were great. Not imperfect, but the size presented a lot of problems for the Bulls and forced them to think and work harder to get into their actions. With Rob in the game, Horford gets a bit more freedom to be himself defensively, because he doesn't need to worry as much about protecting the rim. Chicago is having an interesting season, but despite their record, they can still put a lot of talent on the floor. Smart off-ball players like Dosunmu and Caruso can take advantage of openings, so the Celtics use doubles sparingly as a way to mix up coverages. Overall, they found their success with a combination of drop coverage and switching. A number of big-time individual plays made a difference as well, allowing Boston to hold an opponent under 100 points for the second time in 3 games. In the regular season, where good process and habit building is supreme, the Celtics are on the right track. Consistency is important, but they're adapting quickly and rebuilding their defensive identity. On the season, Boston holds the league's 7th best defensive rating of 110.9. This is a great place to be considering the early season defensive struggles. Over the last 10 games, they're top 5, despite the brutal OKC game inflating the rating a bit. The Celtics found something here. Last season's success was built on an all-time great defense, and with similar personnel, that can be rediscovered. The addition of recurring double teams adds a dimension that even that team wasn't extremely versed in. They experimented with it in the playoffs, especially against Kevin Durant. They're giving themselves an entire regular season to perfect it now. Just as last year's system took time and a few trades to develop, double teams and effective rotations are receiving the necessary care to become a staple of the Celtics' defensive attack. In the NBA, it's crucial to have a variety of coverages. Boston wins with a combination of switch everything and drop coverage to keep the team guessing. Double teams offer a new weapon and a means for silencing the league's most dynamic scorers. When the playoffs come around and the pressure turns on, Celtics can bet against the consistency of role players in the same way they've experienced in years past. All bets come with some level of risk, but with a mascot named Lucky, it's worth a shot. This was a long one, but if you made it here, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.